Those that know me know my two biggest passions in gaming are Halo and Zelda, and with the current state of Halo Infinite and Halo in general, I thought, hey, maybe I'll do a Zelda news video, throw my hat into the ring there. So here is a everything we know about Breath of the Wild 2 video, and unfortunately we don't know much about Breath of the Wild 2, but I'll go with what is confirmed in the first part of the video, and towards the middle I'll cover some of the rumors and speculation about Breath of the Wild 2, and finally I'll end the video with my personal checklist of what I would love to see in the next Zelda installment. But I definitely want to know what all of you want to see in Breath of the Wild 2, so go into the comment section down below and give me your personal wish list for Breath of the Wild 2. Now make sure you guys hit that like button on this video because it greatly helps out the channel and lets me know that you would like to see other videos on the channel besides just Halo stuff. I definitely want to start covering Zelda news, and I'm also thinking about doing Gotham Knights and the Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League because, as you can tell from my channel name and logo, I am a huge Batman fan and superhero fan, so I'd love to cover those, as well as other FPS titles or popular shooting games like maybe Modern Warfare 2 if I do enjoy that game this year. It's been a while since I enjoyed a COD title. Nonetheless, let's get started with this Breath of the Wild 2 video. So let's start with the release date for Breath of the Wild 2, or should I say release window. Producer and project manager for the Legend of Zelda series, E.G. Aonuma, recently confirmed that Breath of the Wild 2 would slip out of its original 2022 release window and would have a new tentative release date for sometime in the spring of 2023. We also don't even know the title of the game. It's not going to be Breath of the Wild 2 most likely. It will have some sort of subtitle, Legend of Zelda, Ganon's Demise, whatever it may be. There are definitely some fan theories out there what this game's story could be about, and I might touch on that later in the video when we talk about the rumors and speculation. Of course, the subtitle of the game will give away some story implications, and that's why Nintendo is holding off on releasing the official title for the game till we get closer to release. We also know that Breath of the Wild 2 will release on the Nintendo Switch, but there may be a Pro Switch or Switch Pro, whatever you want to call it, in the works still. More on that later in the video. Obviously, Breath of the Wild 2 is a direct sequel to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, probably utilizing the same engine. This hasn't been confirmed. However, it is pretty apparent that it looks to be a lot of similar assets. Now, the Legend of Zelda series is no stranger to having direct sequels, but unlike many other gaming series, each title is not a direct sequel to one another. The timeline is kind of all over the place. So it rarely happens with the Legend of Zelda series. That's why this is kind of substantial news. We should be seeing the same Link and Zelda that we saw in Breath of the Wild 1, continuing that story and maybe even going back in time. Now, there's a really good interview with Bill Trinan, the senior product marketing manager of Nintendo of America, and he spoke about Breath of the Wild 2 in a broadcast with IGN. And he did talk about Ocarina of Time and its sequel Majora's Mask and how those shared assets, and that's how Majora's Mask was developed so quickly after Ocarina of Time. And he's quoted as saying, "I would say it's an easy comparison or conclusion to jump to at this point in time, just given what's been shown so far and given the nature of it being a direct sequel. So I understand people making that conclusion, but at the same time, and I don't want to delve too much into it, but this is its own game. I think as we start to show a bit more of the game over the coming months to the next year or so, it'll probably start to be a bit more apparent where this game stands on its own and what makes it so unique. The way that Breath of the Wild 2 builds upon Breath of the Wild, which already was such an expansive game with so many layers of Link's abilities and layers to the gameplay, I think this is going to layer quite a bit more into that." And in an interview with Kotaku, Aonuma was also quoted as saying that they were initially just thinking of DLC ideas for Breath of the Wild 1, but then they had a lot of ideas and they just said, well, this is probably too many ideas for DLC. Let's just make one new game and start from scratch. He also said that the new Breath of the Wild, or the sequel to it, is not necessarily going to be related to Majora's Mask or inspired by it, but what they showed us currently is a little bit darker, which is good news to me because I love Majora's Mask. It is my favorite game of all time and my favorite Zelda because of the emotional impact from the characters and the somber tone of the game. Now we'll get into the speculation and rumors part and potential spoilers here for Breath of the Wild 2. Very light stuff here, but in an interview with Pietro Ubaldi, who is the Italian voice actor for Daruk, he said that he had recorded lines for Breath of the Wild 2 for Daruk and an ancestor, which suggests that we could be going back in time, especially with the ending of of Breath of the Wild 1 and Daruk's fate, we could be going back in time to see those champion characters come back, as well as having an ancestor suggest that a further jump back in time could be in play. And as we could tell from the 2019 reveal trailer, Ganondorf may be coming back to the series, which would be awesome to see, because for such a main villain and such an awesome bad guy, we really don't know much about his background character, and I would love to get a more fleshed out backstory. People are thinking this is Ganondorf because of the Gerudo sign on the earrings there and the gem on his head, and even in the shadow that you see on the wall, some people are saying that really does look like Demise from the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, which was the final boss, and we know that that is like the first incarnation of Ganon, that evil. So this could be really cool. There's a lot of possibilities and a lot of potential here for some really cool backstory stuff, which Breath of the Wild 1 actually did a good job of with some of the memory sequences that they did. Now here's where we talk about the potential for a Switch Pro, because of the most recent gameplay footage for Breath of the Wild 2 being so impressive looking compared to the original. Now, according to the tech experts at Digital Foundry, who I trust a lot because they do some really cool breakdowns and they know their tech, Breath of the Wild 2 includes a number of graphical features that something like the aging Nintendo Switch would really struggle to do. So the newer trailer runs at a higher image quality than what we're used to seeing on the original Nintendo Switch. Now, there are some features that are graphically demanding that can be seen, like volumetric clouds and increased draw distances that may be too much for the OG Switch hardware to handle. And after seeing the new Breath of the Wild 2 footage, the Digital Foundry video producer named Alex Battaglia said that this is not taken from an original Switch. He said, "I honestly don't think that it is. We've seen volumetric clouds very rarely on the Switch, and these don't break down super obviously. Camera cuts also have perfect anti-aliasing, which is even rare for an Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5 game. It could be the next Switch." And some people say that, hey, maybe they rendered this trailer at a higher resolution, but Nintendo generally doesn't do that. And even when Xbox and Sony showcase their games on high-end PCs, Nintendo tries not to do that either. They usually show their stuff running on the native hardware. I mean, if you think about it, it could be a great system seller. Breath of the Wild 1 launched alongside the Nintendo Switch and really boosted sales. So much so, I remember when the Switch was first out and kind of hard to get, more people owned Breath of the Wild 1 than Nintendo Switches were sold on the market, because people were just buying Zelda for when they got their Switch in so that they could play that highly anticipated game. And as far as things that I want to see from this sequel, I really want there to be a higher focus on the music of the series. Zelda is such an iconic soundtrack, some of the best in gaming. One of the main reasons why I fell in love with it at such a young age. That and Halo are two of my favorite soundtracks in anything, let alone gaming. And I feel like, yes, Breath of the Wild had some good music, but I really want a focus more on some of the classic Zelda tunes, Song of Storms, things like that. Playing an instrument is some of my favorite things to do in my favorite Zelda titles. Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, and even Twilight Princess had a little bit of a music mechanic. It just missed those old school themes. It was really cool in Breath of the Wild when you're at the Temple of Time, hearing the slow theme of the Song of Time playing in the background. I thought that was a nice touch. I want to definitely see more of that. The next thing I would love is co-op. I haven't really played a co-op Zelda game besides some of the mods on PC for Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Never got around to Four Swords or to Triforce Heroes, but I would love to get co-op in a proper Zelda title, and with Zelda looking like she plays a main role in this game and maybe even looking fit for battle, how cool would a player number 2 having Zelda there? Oh, that would be awesome. That is probably the biggest feature that they could add that would really get me super hyped for this game, more hyped than I already am. Of course, I want to see more dungeons. I think that was one of the main gripes from Breath of the Wild 1. The Divine Beast didn't really scratch that dungeon itch. The shrines were a little bit of a bite-sized dungeon, but not enough. If we get proper dungeons in Breath of the Wild 2, along with shrines and everything else, that would be absolutely epic. Now, depending on what side of the fence you're on about the weapon degradation feature or mechanic, I personally think it is quite annoying in Breath of the Wild 1. I would like to see a way to possibly upgrade weapons or earn tiers, different tiers of weapons, legendary, epic, whatever. The higher the tier, the better the weapon degradation resistance could be. So I don't mind weapon degradation in games. I love Dark Souls, some of my favorite games of all time, and those have weapon degradation in them, but it's not as annoying as it is in Breath of the Wild 1. So some sort of feature to maybe feel like you're progressing your character like an RPG, getting better weapons and not having them break as often. If you guys really want that to stay in the game, I would welcome that. I would also like to see better rewards for exploring. Like Breath of the Wild has an amazing world, but it feels kind of barren at times. After playing Elden Ring and being rewarded around every single corner for exploring, I feel like I really would love to see that in Zelda. Getting hidden bosses and getting really cool items for that, or even the Korok Seeds, completing the Korok Seeds quest, and then getting a golden piece of poop is probably the trollest thing I think I've ever seen in a video game. And you have potential that Zelda games have done in the past. The magic armor, the Bagoran sword, like there's so many things that you could do. You could reward players for doing these crazy quests and really being dedicated to finding everything. I think there needs to be really good player rewards in this game. And that also ties into the side quests that did not feel too rewarding in Breath of the Wild 1. Majora's Mask is my favorite Zelda, like I said earlier, because of those side quests and how much you got to know the characters and the sense of accomplishment and reward that you got from that game. It really tied into the story quite well, and I thought that was a great way to incentivize the players, especially with getting cool masks and things like that, and then collecting all of them, getting the Fierce Deity mask, one of the coolest things that Zelda's ever done. I would also like to see more lively areas like Hyrule Castle Town or Clock Town from Majora's Mask. Having more areas like that in Breath of the Wild 2 really make the environment feel more alive. I would also like to see classic items return, like the hook shot. Add that to the repertoire of items that Link can use to traverse the world and stuff. I think cool items like that should return and have their uses in the world and in dungeons as well. I would also welcome both more horse and character customization for Link's armors and stuff. I think that would be a really cool feature. Just go a little bit deeper into it. And I would also like to see more enemy variation. It could kind of get repetitive in Breath of the Wild, facing the same 5 or 6 enemies, however many it was. I might be lowballing it a little bit there, but you know what I mean. It felt like you're facing the same goblins, moblins, and keys, all that kind of stuff, Lizolfos, all over and over and over. And finally, while I'm not a big fan of it in many games, underwater exploration would be a welcome new feature, especially if we're going into caverns and caves. I think that would be really cool, diving into water and looking for treasures and items and such. And that's about all I have for you for today's video. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this. I really did enjoy making something that wasn't Halo related for once. So let me know in the comment section what you guys thought. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch my video, and I hope to catch you on either a previous video of mine or a future video of mine. Till that time comes, I'm your boy Patman, and I'm out.